Hipyo, our project's due tomorrow. Can I please copy your homework?
Seriously? Again? Fine. Just make sure you change it up this time.
Thank you so much. I swear I'll change it this time.
1 hour later.
Hey, Hipyo.
Oh, you're back with my jacket.
What you think?
What did you do? You changed it too much. You changed it too much. Why did you change so much? No!
You're probably wondering how I got here. All sad because ASUS finally made a keyboard that's really good? Well, you see that asterisk there? Yeah, we're gonna need to talk about that asterisk. Buckle up. Because ASUS just made their best gaming keyboard ever, the ROG Falchion Ace HFX. Wasn't the best name ever. However, just because it's ASUS's best gaming keyboard yet doesn't mean that it's one you should get. So in this video, I'm putting ASUS's newest keyboard to the test. I'm seeing what's the big deal with these magnets that people keep talking about. And I'll be giving you a few reasons why you might want to consider this keyboard. Mainly that it sounds like good. And a few reasons why you might not. Now, full disclosure, this video is sponsored by ASUS, who did not review this video, did not tell me what to say, and all of my thoughts are my own. And you'll soon realize the importance of all of my thoughts being my own. Now, let's start with the elephant in the room. This thing costs $200 US, or technically it's on sale for 175 bucks, which puts it right at the same price as the Wooting 60HE. Now, if you got here by searching what's the best gaming keyboard of this year, then you might have stumbled into the rabbit hole of Hall effect keyboards, and this is ASUS's first offering at that. Now, with some behemoths in the market like Wooting and even Keychron making their own Hall effect boards, I think ASUS is a bit late to the party here, so they're gonna have to offer something really significant. One could say I'm in search of incredible. Now, I'll talk a bit more about Hall effect technology later in this video, but first, let's see what you get in the box. There's this weird tray thingy, which actually has a very nice rubbery feel to it. I think this might work really well for dampening the board, as well as a USB-C cable, a nice little keycap puller, and a soft touch fabric bag for the keyboard. Wait, it's plastic? What? Now, my first impression is that why is this thing plastic and why is this thing priced the way it is? Because the build quality here can't be something to write home about, right?
So with this thing, you've got the build quality, which is incredibly plastic, similar to the Wooting 60HE, except you can't change the case on it.
Editor Hipyo note here. Theoretically, you could change the case on it. It would just not be anywhere near as open source and easy as with the Wooting.
Because this is incredibly proprietary. So you're kind of getting the best of both worlds and the worst of both worlds. Well, I guess you could customize the keycaps. Good job, ASUS.
Now, one thing you might notice compared to the Wooting 60HE is that this thing has arrow keys. However, if you're someone that likes using a numpad or the F-row, those are all missing here. Sorry. There's also a lot of standard things that you'll see in any ASUS keyboard, like the ROG branding, the standard shine-through PBT keycap, and you've even got a floating key design so that they could make less case. Show off more RGB. Now, in order for this to work well as a gaming keyboard, it needs to do a few things well. Number one, it needs to be easy to use. Number two, it needs to be easy to customize with software and potentially switch swapping. And number three, it should have good latency and potentially some other gamery features. Although I'll talk about more why number three isn't that big of a deal later. Now, number four is you've got gamer branding. I mean, they literally have the word gamer written on it, so it's gonna make you better at gaming, right? Right, guys? Now, one feature that is really cool about this thing is this little touch bar on the back that allows you to change quite a few things with this press of a button. This gives you some really quick media controls in a fun, different way, which I think is kind of cool. So, I mean, good on them for that. Although it is a little bit hard to use. Sometimes it just doesn't do what you want it to do. And I would have just preferred a knob, like this rapid trigger knob that lets you turn your board on and off rapid trigger. That's really great. Now you're probably wondering, wait, Hipyo, what is rapid trigger? What is Hall effect? Well, in this case, it's the one thing making this keyboard potentially worthwhile or marketed towards gamers. But I do think it's important that you know what you want rapid trigger for. So let me just explain what it is first.
Rapid trigger is significant because if you're playing a game that requires the same input over and over again, what it does is on a normal keyboard, if you press down a key, then you can't actually press that key again until it goes all the way up. So if you want to press a key a lot of times, you have to press, release, press, release, press, release over and over and over and over and over again. With rapid trigger, what it does, if I turn on my rapid trigger mode, is when you slightly release the key, it already lets the key activate again. So you can spam an input a ton without as much physical effort. Now, for certain games, that was groundbreaking. For Osu, crazy. But for most games, you actually won't notice the difference, and it will take quite a while to change your muscle memory to even take advantage of that. And in some games, it could actually be way worse, because then you could do accidental inputs, something that no one would ever want.
Now, this board does have rapid trigger, and it does have stuff like snap tap or SOCD that you might have heard of. You know, this keyboard is literally cheating. Yeah. Now, I've already very elaborately shared my thoughts on this in a different video on the Wooting, but if you're new to gaming keyboards, let me explain what SOCD is as well, because that is the main selling point of this thing.
You hit A, your character stops. That's a little bit annoying, right? So if you want to side strafe, you have to go AD, 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 and in some games that needs to be very, very perfect movement for you to get any advantage to it. A little bit annoying, but not the end of the world. In fact, in a game like this, Marvel Rivals, where your accuracy isn't reduced by moving, there's no significant difference between you just spamming AD, hold on. For SOCD, what it does is now when I'm holding down D and I go and hit A, my character moves back in the other direction because it gets rid of that D input. So I can go AD, AD, AD any day of the week. My character will seamlessly side strafe. It is a nice thing.
Now, all of those gaming features are incredibly cool, but they mean nothing if you don't have a use for them and if you can't use them very easily. And that's where I start to run into some of the problems. However, don't get me wrong, there are some very cool things about this keyboard, like the switches, which we'll talk about more soon. And you're probably wondering, Hipyo, why are you focusing so much on the software and the gaming side of things with this keyboard? Well, because if I just took this keyboard on its standard build quality and switches and other merits alone, it would be overpriced, lower quality, and not worth your time of day. Based on the fact that they threw Hall effect on this thing, it makes it worth your time of day if you're a very specific niche set of people. Which brings me, unfortunately, back to the software.
Now, my biggest gripe with every ASUS keyboard has always been their software. Armory Crate is generally a piece of junk. And in this case, it's unfortunately not much better. Like, to be fair, you can customize every key. You can set rapid trigger actuation points, and it has almost everything that you'd want executed in a way that you wouldn't. It's just unnecessarily clunky. Features won't work sometimes. I mean, just look at this. I'm trying to turn on speed tap right now to test it out. It won't activate. I hit the activate button. Guess what happens? Guess what happens? You're not gonna guess. Nothing. Nothing happens. Hold on, let me try one thing. Wah!
1 hour later.
I would like to issue a formal apology to ASUS for the previous bit. I just had to update the keyboard. I'm dumb. It works now. Now, yes, some of that might be user error. However, it didn't tell me there was an update. Most people probably wouldn't have noticed. They just would have saw their feature not working and they would have returned it on Amazon. Now, it's not all bad. There are some highlights, like being able to customize this little touch panel is definitely really neat. The RGB, being able to sync up with some of your other ASUS stuff is undeniably cool. It's just clunky. They really gotta work on that. Like the Wootility, for example, it's a web tool. You don't have to download it. They constantly update it. When your competition has software down this good, and you're a bigger company, it just leaves some questions. It leaves some questions. But let's talk about what is really good about this board, because there are some very good things.
Now, the one saving grace of this keyboard is also its biggest death knell, and that's the switches. As I mentioned before, these are the best Hall effect switches I've ever tried. They feel absolutely buttery smooth. In fact, their construction with polycarbonate and palm is incredible. Now, they're Hall effect switches, meaning that you can customize their actuation point from a very, very little range, so if that's your kind of thing, you can also do that. And they also seem to have effectively solved the chatter problem with every other Hall effect switch, which makes me wonder, how did they solve that?
Why does it sound better? Are the switches different? Maybe they came up with some new brilliant switch idea that's gonna revolutionize every Hall effect keyboard ever, and I'm gonna be really happy about it because that's the one thing that I keep saying is terrible about Hall effect keyboards. They didn't make a proprietary switch, did they? Did they?
So yeah, this is my biggest commendation to ASUS and also the biggest L for the keyboard. Because what I've been saying this entire time is that somebody needs to redesign Hall effect switches and finally fix them, which, to their own detriment, made this switch an entirely closed ecosystem. And this keyboard for that matter, because you won't be able to replace this with any other Hall effect switch. But here's the thing, you wouldn't want to, unless the spring weight isn't to your liking at 50 grams. Because in my opinion, it is the best Hall effect switch I have ever tried.
Now, are these better than your standard mechanical switch? No, and that's still a big problem. You are still taking a hit when you buy this keyboard. It won't sound as stocky, and you're not gonna get that creamy, lovely, standard mechanical keyboard experience. It's also not tactile, so if you like tactile switches, you're out of luck.
And to that point, that is actually my biggest gripe with Wooting and all of these other very expensive Hall effect keyboards. It's that you're just trading a lot more money for a worse keyboard that has gamer marketing attached to it, and a couple features that are good in a couple situations.
But what it is pretty good. For being a plastic keyboard with an average build quality, this thing sounds significantly better than my custom modded wooden Wooting that I spent 15 plus hours on. You can go watch that video. This thing sounds the same, if not better. So yeah, do with that what you will.
And you're probably wondering, what is that one feature that's gonna give me an advantage with this keyboard? And for the 5% of you that are incredibly competitive gamers, you're gonna wanna listen here.
Now, the only thing that these rapid trigger keyboards have been absolutely goated for in gaming is SOCD, snap tap. I've got a whole video on it, how it's literally cheating. But guess what that does for you? They put it in this keyboard and it's good for getting banned. Well, except for in the very few games that it won't get you banned. Then it could be a real advantage, and you probably know what games those are. Now, as a lot of you have seen, I've already ranted about how I feel about Hall effect and gamer marketing, and how the vast majority of you would be significantly better at that competitive game that you care about if you didn't buy a new keyboard and spent that money on coaching. But I'm not gonna get into that today. You can watch my other video on that. It's on the Wooting. All of those thoughts that I have, exact same with this board. I still don't think Hall effect is a technology that most gamers need. It's cool for some people, and for the vast majority of people, you won't notice a meaningful difference in your gameplay, or it could even make you worse. If you don't believe me, then I have a video coming next year where I'll be getting into the very nitty-gritty data with another very large YouTube channel. You'll want to subscribe for that one.
But ultimately, what do I think of this board? Well, I think it's priced way too expensive. I think it's built not that great. However, I do think they made some amazing steps in a right direction with these switches. Because theoretically, if Hall effect switches finally get to a point where they can compete with mechanical switches, there will be no point to get a mechanical switch because they are arguably, objectively, a little bit better. And I do urge you to get a Hall effect keyboard and try it out because I do think it's a very fun technology that's really, really cool. It's just also incredibly over-marketed towards gamers.
Now, this is ASUS's best gaming keyboard yet, but that's only by a small margin, because basically any other well-performing mechanical keyboard could still go toe-to-toe with this thing, except in a few specific situations. So, should you go out and buy this if you're a gamer? Probably not. In fact, you already heard my rant. You probably shouldn't buy any Hall effect keyboard yet. They're still experimental, unless you like the technology. If you're a nerd, be a nerd. That's fine. But don't be brainwashed. Don't be a brainwashed gamer. Please. Please.